Hello, guys. It is Mrs. Lloyd, and we are starting our new unit today. We've got our regular attendee, Penny, and Rufus is in the room too. So if you notice weird noises coming from the corner, he's hanging out too. All right, so we are into the digestive system, one of my favorite units to talk about because we get to talk about poop, and that's awesome. You probably want your textbook for today, and then you also want to make sure you've got the new study guide, your Unit 14 study guide. If you want to print this one that's in color, you can go ahead. I've linked it on the plan book page, and I'll try to remember to post it in Google Classroom for you as well. The color picture might be nice if you have a color printer at home, but it is not necessary. So your textbook, if you are wanting to use your textbook, I got a little kick out of this. Your tabs on your textbook are all like color coded, and guess what color the digestive systems tab is? Brown. For poop. I think somebody put that in there on purpose. I like it. All right, so here we go. I don't have your date yet for your test. It'll definitely be after spring break. We won't be doing any new notes or assignments over spring break. So no need to worry about that stuff. So today is Tuesday, March 31st. We're just going to go over the basic structures and briefly the processes of the digestive system and all the organs that we're going to see here. So if you have your textbook handy, page 857 might be super helpful. It's the exact same picture that we have on page 2. That's where we're at, page 2 of our study guide packet. And I am using all of the exact same labels on here that is in your textbook and on this as well. So if you want to listen to me talk about these structures, you might have your textbook open. You can jot them down at your own leisure or go back and do that later. Some of these structures relate to our respiratory system that we just covered because there's a few shared passageways. So our oral cavity or our mouth is the first step in our digestive system. And think of the digestive system as a long tube, and that is exactly what it is. It's a tube from mouth to anus. We call it the GI tract or the alimentary canal, and it is just a tube. And as we go through the tube, we'll name those structures of the tube. Anything that's not a part of the tube that is adding in to the system is called an accessory organ. So accessories are like on top of things. And so if it's not a part of the tube itself, like the liver and gallbladder, for example, they're not tube organs, but they are important for the digestive system. So we call them accessory organs. All right. So the mouth, first step of our tube. Okay. One accessory organ in your mouth is your tongue. Right? On pictures and stuff, it is a muscle, this muscular structure that's attached to the bottom of your mouth. And the main point of that is to position food in between your teeth for chewing. And then when you swallow, it pushes food to the back of your throat. So when you swallow, the food goes down. And then what you see here also pictured, the next 3 lines are 3 different glands. Right? These are our different types of salivary glands, and they each have different names. So there's one at the far back of the mouth, and that's the parotid gland. And then we have the sublingual gland, and that is underneath the tongue. So lingual, as in speaking, your linguistics, tongue, sublingual. And then sort of at the back base of the throat or pharynx region, that's the submandibular gland. Because it's kind of by the mandible, underneath the mandible, submandibular gland. So that one's a little bit lower. So the parotid towards the back, underneath the tongue, sublingual and submandibular. All right. Then, so your food, we just chewed you up in my mouth with my teeth, which are also an accessory organ. My tongue pushed that food back. I swallowed it. It went through my throat or my pharynx, right, from last chapter. And then, thanks to the epiglottis, it would cover up my trachea when I swallowed and prevent me from choking, aspirating on that food. And instead, it would force it down the tube behind the trachea, my food tube, which is your esophagus. So that's our next structure coming down here, the esophagus. All right. Your esophagus then is going to empty its contents into your stomach, although I don't think that's the next one I haven't covered. Sitting up above here, this very large, and it is larger than your stomach, it's a large organ, is your liver. And then the gallbladder is tucked up underneath there. These guys have asterisks because they are accessory organs. So you might even put little asterisks by everything that's noted on here because those are accessory organs as well, not a part of the tube. All right. And then as we go down here, as I mentioned, we've got our stomach. Okay. A few other structures here. We've got the pancreas. So we've talked about the pancreas before because it creates some of our hormones that we've used in digestion. And we talk about diabetes and things like that. But it secretes also digestive juices into the beginning of your small intestine. And so it has digestive functions. The spleen Cool, she's done. All right, so the spleen is in parentheses here. You do probably want to write it down, but it's actually not a part of the digestive system. As we saw before, its main job is to filter blood, and that was a function of our lymphatic system. And so even though it's tucked behind the stomach, back there, it's actually not part of the digestive system, but lymphatic. All right, and then moving down, we have, if we were following our food tube, okay, out of our stomach, it's going to pass through a sphincter, and then it coils and twists and turns all through this portion here, which is your small intestine. For the average human, they say that your small intestine is 22 feet long if you were to stretch it out. And I hope we are back to school so we can do our pig dissection when we get back, because I want you guys to see how long that the small intestine is in your fetal pigs that we'll do our dissection with. So you have your small intestine, okay, but it's broken up into 3 segments. So like the beginning portion of the tube, the middle portion of the tube, and the end portion of the tube. So they basically go in these 3 order. The very top, right when it leaves the stomach and it makes this kind of tight turn around the pancreas, it's called the duodenum. Duodenum, fun to say it, duodenum. And then the middle part, which is much longer and this kind of main twisty portion, is the jejunum. Jejunum. I don't know where these names came from. And then the very last portion before it merges with our large intestine is the ileum. Ileum. And so there's a little valve between the small intestine and the large intestine called the ileocecal valve, because it's where the ileum and the cecum, which is, we'll see, a part of our small intestine or large intestine, where they come together. Okay, so 3 parts of the small intestine: the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Fun stuff. All right. Everything else over here in this bracket is technically a part of the large intestine. So there's a lot of different stuff here in our large intestine, although it's not very complicated to look at. So think of it like a, like a house almost. There's 2 sides to it and then a top, okay? 2 sides and a top. And so food always moves in the same direction. So it's going to be starting in on your right side, coming from your small intestine and then moving its way up. And then it's going to go across the top and then down along the way. So if you've ever felt like a gas bubble, right, and it's felt like you almost had it feeling it moving. It could be part in your large intestine, and it takes this path kind of up the right side, over the top, and then down the bottom. Very random side note, if you've ever done yoga before or ever will in your life, there is this pose called wind relieving pose. And it's literally where you hug your knee into your chest. You're usually laying down and you hug it in and you just hold it and breathe. You're always supposed to start with your right leg first. So I just did my right side, okay? And it's called wind relieving pose because the idea is that your leg is putting pressure on your abdomen and forcing farts, wind, up and over. And then after you do your right leg, you're supposed to do your left leg and you pull it up. And the idea is that that action is going to force it down and then out. And people in yoga will fart after doing this one. If you ever feel like you need to fart, try that wind relieving pose. All right. TMI. So the three main parts, just like our small intestine had three parts of it, your large intestine has three parts to it as well. Really going in order, the ascending colon, that's on the right side, coming up. Okay. The transverse colon, it's transverse. It goes flat along the top. That's Rufus. That was his mouth, but not wind relieving pose. And then we have the descending colon where it travels back down. So right here, this is the ascending colon right there. This is the transverse colon across the top, and then the descending colon right here. Right. Then as the colon, right, or large intestine. So colon is just another word for large intestine. Kind of makes this turn here. We have a few other structures. This portion that tucks underneath the small intestine is called the sigmoid colon. That's not the next line to label. I'll come back to the cecum. That's the sigmoid colon. And then as it comes straight down, that's your rectum. Right? It's a short stint of it. And then the anal canal is just basically right before you get to the anus. So the other two things over here at the very beginning of our ascending colon is the appendix, which we've talked about before. It maybe has some minute functions in our lymphatic system, but that's about it. The bacteria and stuff can get trapped in there as your fecal matter is moving through your digestive tract here and gets backed up, and you might have to have it removed. The cecum, right, is the beginning portion, right, where that appendix is attached to. It's sort of this wide portion of the start of your large intestine. So the very beginning of your ascending colon, because remember the ascending colon is going up. So your cecum is just this section right here, and the appendix is attached to it. So your large intestine is referred to as the colon. The whole thing. A colonoscopy is where they put a microscope up your anus and then follow that track around, checking out your entire large intestine. And so that's what they're checking out when you get a colonoscopy. Anyways, those are just the structures. Your homework is mostly just identifying these. Page 857 is going to help you with that. But because it's so short and sweet, and because Rufus is super excited about today's lesson, we're going to fill out the front too and talk about some of the functions of these. Some of tomorrow's homework will actually come from these notes. I didn't want to make your homework assignment today too in many questions. So we'll sort of split it up tomorrow as well. So this one, if you just flip the page in your textbook, it's on page 858. It is color coded on here, and I think it's pretty intentional. If you notice, okay, that this box right here is blue, and then there's kind of a blue arrow, and then this line here, at least at the beginning, is blue. That color change is trying to show you the action or what is happening at different steps. So then down here, we get to kind of this purpley pink color, and these little liquid drops coming in are in pink. That's significant. So if I had a black and white version, and also I just kind of like coloring anyways, I might outline these boxes in different colors, whatever, blue, purple, pink, green, orange, brown. I bet you can figure out what brown is. And trace any of these color like arrows or actions or other things that you see on here. Those are intentional. I didn't cover up everything. Obviously, you can just look at this in the textbook, but you can kind of see where my font has changed a little bit because I want you to change ever so slightly what you have in your notes packet compared to page 858. It's mostly good. It's not the end of the world if you write it down exactly, but there's just a few small additions or changes I made that we'll go over. So what is your digestive system doing as you consume food and as it passes through? So there's some major different steps. That first step up there in the blue box is ingestion. When I ingest food, that's basically the fancy word for eat. Okay, so eating food, this is that bluish teal color up here at the top. So there's a swirly line going all the way through your picture here. And that's trying to show you the path that food takes. But the color does start off as sort of this blue color and it changes to green because the action is going to change slightly as we move further down. So in your mouth, okay, as you ingest your food, you're going to be doing some chewing action. The fancy word for chewing, and this was one thing that I changed on here, it's called mastication. Mastication. It's the fancy word for chewing. We didn't learn the name of all the muscles, but there's a muscle right here called the masseter, and that's your chewing muscle. When you flex your jaw, you can feel that muscle right here flex. It's called the masseter because it's involved in mastication or chewing. All right. So the first thing that's happening up here, these purple pictures are trying to show you different mechanical breakdown. So mastication or chewing, I would actually it's really faint. It might be easier to see in your textbook, but there's kind of this little purple arrow that's like making a swirly. That's trying to show you that in your mouth, you have mechanical breakdown of food, which is literally chewing, mastication, making that food smaller. And so as you chew it, it breaks it down. But another mechanical breakdown that you have is in your stomach, and that is the churning action of your stomach when you eat food. So it just naturally sort of rolls and rotates as you ingest food. So we call that churning, the churning of your stomach. If you ever felt your stomach growl while it was empty, that's the churning action of the stomach. It's just empty. So it was kind of echoey, and that's what made that sound, is just the echo churning of your stomach. All right, and then segmentation. Okay? If your textbook is open and you glance over to page 859, I didn't think I had enough to have this picture in here, but segmentation is this idea that the food gets broken down into smaller pieces and chunks. Like you've probably noticed when you have defecated before, it comes out not normally as a whole thing, but as smaller pieces. This is this idea of segmentation that your small and large intestine will do. And there's little purple swirling actions going down there. That's the mechanical breakdown as well. So that's what's happening with mechanical breakdown. All the purple things on this picture are showing that. All right, so in my mouth, when I chew, I masticate my food. My tongue also helps to form that food into a ball. And that ball of food I swallow is called a bolus, B-O-L-U-S. That's not on your diagram in your textbook. I want you guys to add that down. But a ball of food is called a bolus. And then it goes past your pharynx, hopefully not in your trachea, because thank you, epiglottis covers it up. And I swallow it. It goes into my esophagus. Okay. And all of this green action right here, okay, sort of showing it swirling and moving, is this action of swallowing called deglution and peristalsis. Peristalsis is this They call it a wave-like contraction. So if you've ever seen a snake eat food before and how it squeezes its intestines along, or think of like squeezing toothpaste out of a tube, that's peristalsis. And those are smooth muscles that are like squeezing and stretching and squeezing and stretching that action as we move through down. Right, so the sectional swallowing, and then peristalsis is propulsion, moving the food through your body. So we've ingested, we did some mechanical breakdown, and now we've got propulsion where it's traveling and getting pushed through in one direction. Thankfully, this is a one-track road here. And then we get to kind of the end part of our stomach and the small intestine. And this is where the action happens. When we talk about digestion, this is the digestive chapter, I am talking chemical breakdown. So digesting something would be taking a piece of bread and turning it into glucose, taking a complex carbohydrate and breaking it down into the smaller and smaller subunits, or taking a piece of steak that's tons of protein and breaking that down into amino acids. That's digestion. So all of these little liquid drops here are showing your accessory organs putting in liquid to break this food down in this process called digestion. So it's breaking it down chemically. So sometimes the chemical breakdown is digestion. Okay, and then this is what we want from all of that digestion is absorption. Right. So all of those orange arrows coming out of the small intestine. So purple arrows going in is like the chemicals going in to digest. All the orange arrows coming out is the good stuff we're absorbing. Okay. So the whole point of this is to get nutrients out of the food I eat. The good stuff is going to get soaked up out of my small intestine and a little in the large, but mostly the end of my small intestine. And it's going to go into my blood vessels. Make sure and have those labeled. Oh, there shouldn't be 2 lipids on here. That's a typo. Let me fix that super fast. But it's going to get absorbed into my blood vessels, as well as some of it is going to go into my lymph vessels as well. Those nutrients that get absorbed into my lymph are called lacteal. So please add that term right by where you have your lymph vessel. But this is all the nutrients that's getting absorbed. Most of it goes into my bloodstream. But the lipid, this is what I was trying to say, some of your fat specifically goes into your lymph vessels. Your fat actually goes there. Not all of it, but some of it. And so we call that kind of absorption lacteal. Not the same as like lactate kind of action, lacteal. Now, as we move down here further, so the small intestine was this narrower portion of my intestine. And then see how it gets thicker here? That's the large intestine. I should have mentioned this sooner, but the small intestine is very long, but small in diameter. The large intestine compared to the small is very short, but it's thicker in diameter. So that's where the name comes from. Doesn't have to do with length, but more diameter. When you get to the large intestine, pretty much all of absorption is done. You're not getting any nutrients out of that anymore. But what your large intestine does do is reabsorb water. So please, on this very bottom arrow right here going into the blood, make sure that you draw a little line to it and say that this is mainly water that's getting absorbed out of the large intestine. So when we get down here to the bottom, this is where the action happens. All of this brown stuff backing up, you guessed it, that's going to be your feces. And it is going to be removed through the anus. And we call this process defecation. So ingestion is step 1, defecation is at the end. And we remove all of the things. Basically, defecation is any leftover chemicals that your body did not absorb or did not want and didn't need. All right, so that's just a real quick, brief overview. This is super similar to page 858 with some small changes. That's it. That's all. I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. See you later.